Welcome, dear viewers. Thank you so much for all the love you've shown to the channel over the past week. Starting this week, there will be exclusive scary episodes for our channel members. Join our membership at just 99 cents per month. Enjoy. The first time I witnessed true darkness was when my brother Thomas died. He was only 12, I was 9. One minute he was picking me up from school in his beat-up BMX bike. The next he was convulsing on the pavement, foam bubbling at the corners of his mouth, eyes rolling back into his skull. The doctors called it a sudden brain aneurysm. Nobody could have predicted it. Nobody could have prevented it. My parents never recovered. Dad drowned himself in whiskey and research papers. Mom in prescription pills and daytime television. By the time I turned 15, I was essentially raising myself. The only real guidance I had was Thomas's voice, preserved like amber in my memories, still telling me to study hard, to look at the stars, to imagine what might be out there. I followed that voice all the way to MIT, then to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. By 32, I had a PhD in astrophysics and was running data analysis on the Deep Space Observation Initiative. My life was work, my work was solitude, and my solitude was populated by spectral data, computer models, and the occasional glass of Dad's favourite single malt. That changed on October 17th when the anomaly appeared in our readings. "Holden, you need to see this." Dr. Vaughan's voice broke through my concentration. He was hunched over his terminal, the blue light of his screens reflecting off his glasses. "It's from the DSCOVR2 data stream." I reluctantly abandoned my own calculations and walked over. Vaughan was the senior data analyst, a brilliant mind wrapped in a perpetually rumpled Oxford shirt and khakis that always seemed one size too large. "What am I looking at?" I asked, leaning over his shoulder. "Electromagnetic absorption patterns from the Andromeda sector. See this dip here?" He pointed to an irregular valley in an otherwise smooth curve. "It shouldn't exist." I studied the readout, feeling a familiar tightness in my chest. The same sensation I'd experienced watching Thomas take his last breath on the sidewalk outside Oakwood Elementary. Something was wrong in a fundamental, irrefutable way. "Could be an instrument error," I suggested, not believing it myself. "Ran 3 separate diagnostics. The equipment is functioning normally." That was the beginning. Within weeks, the anomaly had grown from a curiosity to an obsession for our entire team. The absorption pattern wasn't random. It was too consistent, too structured. Whatever was causing it was massive, at least the size of a small moon, and it was absorbing radiation in a way that suggested intelligence, purpose. The information was classified immediately. Our team of 7 became the Andromeda Response Unit. We were relocated to a subterranean facility beneath the main JPL campus, given unlimited resources, and told to figure out what we were dealing with. But we weren't told everything. 2 months into the project, I found the first security badge. It was wedged between the pages of a data printout, a standard NASA ID with a name and face I didn't recognize. Gregory Hammond, Special Projects Division. When I asked Vaughan about it, he just shrugged and said he'd never heard of the guy. I should have let it go. Instead, I used my access codes to search the personnel database. Hammond existed, all right. He'd worked at JPL for 8 years before being transferred to an undisclosed project. The transfer date, 2 days after our discovery of the Andromeda anomaly. That night, as I was leaving the facility, a black sedan pulled alongside me in the parking garage. The window rolled down, revealing a man with a close-cropped military haircut and eyes like chips of flint. "Dr. Holden Pierce," he said. Not a question. "I need you to come with me." I almost refused. Almost. But something in his expression told me this wasn't optional. I got in the car. That was the night I learned about the Andromeda Protocol and the 7 rules that would keep me alive, or so they claimed, as I studied the most dangerous discovery in human history. The sedan took me to a nondescript office building in Pasadena. No signage, no security visible from the street, just tinted windows and a keycard entrance. Inside was different. Armed guards, biometric scanners, and enough surveillance equipment to make the Pentagon jealous. The man who'd collected me, who eventually introduced himself only as Administrator Cole, led me to a windowless conference room where 4 people were already seated. I recognized Dr. Vaughn, looking even more disheveled than usual. The others were strangers, 2 men in military uniforms with the insignia removed, and an older gentleman in an impeccable charcoal suit. "Dr. Pierce," suit guy said, "thank you for joining us." "Please have a seat." I remained standing. What the hell is this about? "It's about Andromeda," Vaughn said, his voice barely a whisper. "They know what it is." Cole gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Dr. Pierce. This will take some time." I sat. The older man opened a leather portfolio and slid a document across the table. "This is a revised non-disclosure agreement. It differs from your standard NASA contract in that violation is considered an act of treason against the United States, punishable by—" "Yeah, I get it," I interrupted, skimming the dense legalese. "Death or life imprisonment. Extraordinary times, extraordinary measures. Can we skip to the part where you tell me what's actually happening?" The man smiled thinly. "Your anomaly is artificial. We've known about it for approximately 14 months. My brain stuttered. "That's impossible. We only detected it 2 months ago." "You detected it with the equipment you had access to. There are other listening posts." He nodded to one of the military men, who opened a laptop and turned it to face me. The display showed a 3-dimensional model of what looked like a massive sphere constructed of interconnected panels. Parts of it were transparent, revealing a star at its center. "A DYSON sphere," I breathed. "In Andromeda." "Yes," Cole said. "And it's active. Absorbing not just radiation but something else entirely." Vaughn shifted uncomfortably. "They think it's consuming life energy." I would have laughed if Vaughn's face hadn't been so grave. "Life energy? What does that even mean?" "It means," the suit man said, "that we've detected a correlation between increased activity from the sphere and extinction-level events on planets within its radius of influence." "That's insane. Impossible." Cole leaned forward. 3 months ago, we watched through our most advanced telescopes as an entire solar system went dark. Not just the star, every planet, moon, and detectable life form simply winked out, like someone flipped a switch. My mouth went dry. "If that's true, why bring me here? What do you expect me to do about it?" "You're here because your analysis of the electromagnetic patterns was the most accurate we've seen from someone outside the program." The suit man stood up. "You're also here because of your brother." Ice formed in my gut. "What about my brother?" "Thomas Pierce didn't die of a brain aneurysm, Dr. Pierce. He died because he saw something when he pointed his amateur telescope at the Andromeda galaxy, something his young mind couldn't process." The room tilted. My fingernails dug into my palms. "That's bullshit. He was 12. He had a cheap reflector telescope he got for Christmas." "He also had a remarkable mind," Cole said softly. "And unfortunately, the sphere sometimes notices when it's being observed in certain ways." The military men exchanged glances. Vaughn wouldn't meet my eyes. "We need you because your brother's brain patterns showed a unique resistance to the sphere's influence. We believe you may share that resistance." I should have walked out. Should have told them to go fuck themselves with their conspiracy theories and pseudoscience. Instead, I asked, "What do you need me to do?" Cole smiled, a predator's smile, all teeth and no warmth. "Study it. Help us understand it. But to do that and remain safe, you must follow the Andromeda Protocol." He slid another document across the table. 7 rules printed in stark black text on white paper. "Rule 1, Cole recited as I read. "Never observe the anomaly directly. All data must be viewed through the provided filters. Rule 2, never discuss the anomaly outside of designated secure areas. Rule 3, record all dreams in the provided journal immediately upon waking. Report any recurring imagery to your supervisor. Rule 4, maintain the prescribed medication regimen without exception. Rule 5, no personal electronic devices inside the facility, no exceptions. Rule 6. If you hear your name called by an unfamiliar voice, do not respond. Alert security immediately. Rule 7. If screen displays show any image resembling a human face not present in the room, terminate all systems and evacuate immediately. I looked up from the paper. You can't be serious. 28 researchers have died studying this phenomenon, Dr. Pierce, the suit man said quietly. We are deadly serious. I thought of Thomas, seizing on the sidewalk, eyes fixed on something invisible. I thought of the anomaly, a construct big enough to surround a star built by something with technology beyond our comprehension. When do I start? You already have, Cole said, checking his watch. Congratulations, Dr. Pierce. Welcome to the Andromeda Protocol. The facility was buried beneath the Mojave Desert, a 2-hour drive from JPL. From the surface, it looked like nothing. A small administrative building surrounded by a chain-link fence with faded signs warning of government property and prosecution for trespassing. The real complex was 300 feet below, accessible only by a freight elevator that required both retinal scanning and voice authentication. Home, sweet home, muttered Dr. Abrams, my assigned liaison. He was a short, stocky man with a Boston accent and perpetually crumpled clothes, like he'd slept in them, which, according to Vaughn, he often did. You'll get used to the smell. The smell was a mix of recycled air, industrial cleaners, and something else I couldn't quite place. Metallic but organic, like copper pennies left too long in a sweaty palm. How many people work down here? I asked as we passed through another security checkpoint. The guards wore no insignia, but their weapons were very real. 32 research staff, 15 security personnel, 8 maintenance workers, plus the occasional visitor. Abrams swiped his badge at a door marked Analysis Suite Delta. This is you. The room beyond was impressive, a circular space ringed with workstations, each featuring multiple monitors and specialized equipment I didn't recognize. At the center stood a raised platform with what looked like a modified telescope, except instead of an eyepiece, it fed into a complex array of electronic components. That's the DYSON, Direct Interface Sensory Encoding Receiver, Abrams explained, noting my interest. Converts the, let's call them emissions from the anomaly into data we can process without, losing our minds. Has that happened? I asked, approaching the machine with caution. People losing their minds? Abrams' expression darkened. Remember Rule 7? There's a reason for it. He checked his watch. Your orientation starts in 10 minutes. Your quarters are through there. Get settled, then meet me in conference room B. My quarters was a Spartan but functional studio apartment. Bed, desk, bathroom, small kitchenette. No windows, obviously. The walls were a bland institutional beige. Someone had made an effort to humanize the space with a small potted plant and prints of famous astronomical photographs. I noticed none of them showed Andromeda. I unpacked my meager belongings, swallowed the first of my prescribed medication, a small white pill that Abrams had handed me without explanation, and headed to meet the team. Conference room B contained 6 people besides myself and Abrams. Vaughn I recognized along with Cole. The others were introduced as Dr. Larson, astrophysicist, Dr. Whitby, quantum mechanics specialist, Dr. Keating, xenobiologist, and Technician Doyle, whose specialty wasn't mentioned. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life, Cole began without preamble. You've been briefed on the basics, now for the details. Dr. Keating? Keating was tall and thin with a shock of prematurely white hair and darting eyes that never settled on one spot for long. The anomaly, designation AS1, first appeared in our specialized equipment 16 months ago. Initial analysis suggested artificial construction with technology far beyond our current capabilities. He tapped a tablet, and the room's lights dimmed as a holographic projection appeared above the table. The same sphere model I'd seen before. AS1 surrounds a G-type main sequence star similar to our Sun. The sphere itself appears to be composed of millions of individual panels, each approximately 100 kilometers across. The structure harvests energy, yes, but conventional radiation is only part of what it consumes. The image zoomed in, showing strange patterns on the panels, swirling, organic-looking designs that seemed to shift even as we watched. 3 months ago, we observed this. The image changed to show a solar system with 8 planets. As we watched, a wave of something like darkness spread from the direction of the sphere. When it passed, the planets were still there, but somehow empty, lifeless. We believe AS1 is capable of extracting what we've termed vital energy from living organisms across vast distances, Keating continued. The mechanism is unknown, but the effect is uniform. Total biological extinction within the affected zone. And it's spreading, Cole added grimly. The zone of influence has expanded by approximately 7 light-years since our first observation. I tried to process this. You're saying this thing is eating life? Like some kind of cosmic vampire? Crude but not inaccurate, Keating admitted. More concerning is that the rate of expansion appears to be accelerating. At the current trajectory, the edge of the effect will reach the Milky Way in approximately 2.1 million years. That's a long timeline, I pointed out. It was 2.9 million years when we first detected it, Cole said quietly. The acceleration is non-linear. The implications hit me like a physical blow. So we're studying this to, what? Find a way to destroy it? From 2.5 million light-years away? First, we need to understand it, Vaughan said. That's where you come in. Your analysis of the electromagnetic patterns showed insight none of us had. You identified structures we missed. Your workstation is programmed with the filters required by Rule 1, Abrams explained. Never, under any circumstances, look at raw data from AS1. The filters aren't just for your protection. They're to prevent the sphere from noticing you. Noticing me, I repeated flatly. Like it noticed my brother? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Yes, Cole finally said. Like it noticed your brother, and the 28 researchers we've lost. Your first assignment, Abrams continued, changing the subject, is to analyze these recurrence patterns in the sphere's emissions. He handed me a thick folder. Start tomorrow. Tonight. Get some rest. Rest. Right. Back in my quarters, I thumbed through the folder. Hundreds of pages of data, most of it incomprehensible without context. One page caught my eye. A handwritten note that simply read, "It dreams when we dream." I should have taken that as my first warning. That night, I dreamt of Thomas. We were back at Oakwood Elementary, but the school was empty. Outside the windows, the sky was wrong. Not blue, but a deep purple, scattered with stars that moved in deliberate patterns. "You shouldn't be here, Holden," Thomas said. His face was pale, eyes too large. "It sees you now." "What sees me, Thomas?" He pointed to the sky. "The hunger. It's so empty, Holden. It's been empty for so long." I woke gasping, drenched in sweat. Following Rule 3, I grabbed the leather-bound journal from my nightstand and recorded everything I could remember. When I finished writing, I noticed something odd, a faint humming sound coming from my desk. The computer I'd been issued, which should have been powered down, had its screen on. As I watched, text began to appear, letter by letter, as if someone were typing remotely. HOLDENPIERCEI froze, remembering Rule 6. This wasn't someone calling my name, but it felt like the same warning applied. I should have called security. Instead, I approached the screen. More text appeared. THOMASSAYSHELLO. My hand hovered over the emergency button on the wall. One press would bring security running. The screen flickered, and for a split second I saw a face. Not human, not anything I could describe with words from any earthly language. Just a suggestion of features arranged in a way that conveyed intelligence, hunger, and absolute alienness. I slammed my hand on the emergency button. Alarms blared, and I heard the pounding of boots in the corridor. The screen went black, leaving me staring at my own pale reflection. Rule 7. If screen displays show any image resembling a human face not present in the room, terminate all systems and evacuate immediately. It hadn't been a human face, not even close. And that, I realized with growing horror, might be a loophole in the rules that could get us all killed. You violated Rule 7, Cole stated flatly. We were sitting in a sterile interrogation room, just the two of us. His face was expressionless, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his anger. I didn't, I countered. Rule 7 specifically mentions any image resembling a human face. What I saw wasn't human, not even close. Cole's eye twitched. The intent of the rule. I followed the protocols exactly as written, I interrupted. If there's a flaw in your rules, that's not my fault. He stared at me for a long moment before sighing. The rules were written based on previous incidents. We've never encountered this particular manifestation before. He slid a tablet across the table. Which is why we need you to describe exactly what you saw. I hesitated. How do you describe something that exists outside the framework of human experience? It was wrong. Features that shouldn't go together. Like looking at a Picasso but three-dimensional and alive. There were elements that might have been eyes, but they were arranged vertically. And something like a mouth, but it opened in ways that shouldn't be physically possible. Cole nodded, making notes. And the message? Thomas says hello? Yes. Do you believe it was actually communicating with you, or using your brother's memory to manipulate you? I hadn't considered that distinction. I don't know, it felt personal. That's how it works, Cole said grimly. It gets inside your head, finds what matters to you, and uses it. That's why we have Rule 3, the dream journal. Your subconscious processes data your conscious mind can't handle. The entity exploits that. You say entity like it's a being, not just a structure, I noted. Cole's expression darkened. We don't know what it is. A machine? A hive mind? A single consciousness spread across millions of components? What we do know is that it acts with purpose, adapts to our countermeasures, and seems to enjoy the process. The word choice sent a chill down my spine. Enjoy. Dr. Hammond, one of our previous researchers, theorized that it derives some kind of satisfaction from the moment of extraction. That's why it sometimes communicates with potential victims before consuming them. It's savoring the meal. I swallowed hard. And what happened to Dr. Hammond? Cole didn't answer directly. Rule 3 has been updated. Any dreams involving your brother are to be reported immediately, regardless of content. After the interrogation, I was escorted back to my workstation. The computer had been replaced with a new model featuring additional encryption and monitoring software. The rest of the team gave me a wide berth, as if whatever had reached out to me might be contagious. Only Vaughn approached, sliding a cup of coffee across my desk. You're not the first, he said quietly. We've all had experiences. I took the coffee gratefully. Why didn't anyone warn me about this specific possibility? Would you have believed us? Vaughn smiled sadly. Besides, each person's experience is unique. The entity tailors its approach. I thought about that as I pulled up the data files I'd been assigned. Has anyone ever responded? Tried to communicate back? Vaughn's smile vanished. Dr. Reynolds. 5 months ago. He tried to establish a dialogue, thought he could reason with it. He glanced around to ensure no one was listening. They found him in his quarters, every blood vessel in his brain ruptured. His computer recorded 6 hours of him typing responses to messages only he could see. I turned back to my screens, a new wariness tempering my scientific curiosity. The data sets before me showed energy fluctuations from the sphere over a 3-month period. As I began analyzing them, I noticed something odd. There was a pattern to the fluctuations, a rhythm almost like breathing, or heartbeats. I pulled up historical data, extending the timeline back to the first observations. The pattern held, but with a crucial difference. The breaths were getting faster. The entity, or machine, or whatever it was accelerating its consumption. "Vaughn," I called out, "look at this interval analysis." He leaned over my shoulder, squinting at the screen. "What am I seeing?" "The sphere has a pulse, and it's increasing, from one cycle every 42 days to one every 39, at this rate of acceleration." "It matches Cole's timeline," Vaughn murmured. 2.1 million years until it reaches the Milky Way." I shook my head. "That's assuming linear acceleration. But look at this curve, it's exponential. The more it consumes, the faster it can consume." Vaughn's face paled. "Have you shown this to anyone else?" "Just found it now." "Keep it between us for the moment. I need to check something." He hurried away, leaving me staring at the pulsing data points that represented the doom of countless worlds. That night, I dreamt again of Thomas. We were in our childhood backyard, but the stars overhead were wrong, too bright, too close, moving in deliberate patterns like fireflies signaling to each other. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Thomas said, his face upturned to the alien sky. "What is it, Thomas?" "What am I seeing?" He looked at me, eyes reflecting pinpoints of light that weren't from the stars above us. "The web. Everything's connected, Holden. Everything's food." I woke with a gasp, fumbling for my dream journal. As I recorded the details, my hands shook. Following the updated Rule 3, I immediately pressed the communication button by my bed. "Dr. Pierce, what's your emergency?" The voice belonged to night security. "I need to report a dream under Rule 3, I said. "It involved my brother." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Dr. Keating, the xenobiologist, who'd apparently drawn the short straw for night duty. "Everything's connected, everything's food," he repeated, reading from my journal. "Interesting phrasing." "What does it mean?" I asked. Keating removed his glasses, polishing them methodically. "We have a theory, still unproven, that the sphere doesn't just consume biological energy. It consumes consciousness itself, awareness, sentience." I stared at him. "How is that even possible?" "How is consciousness possible?" he countered. "We don't understand our own awareness, let alone how it might be extracted or harvested." He returned his glasses to his face. "But the data suggests the sphere specifically targets planets with advanced life forms, prioritizing them over worlds with only simple organisms." "It's farming us," I whispered, the realization like ice water in my veins, "on a galactic scale." Keating nodded grimly, "And the rate of consumption is increasing." After Keating left, I couldn't get back to sleep. Instead, I reviewed my notes on the pulsation pattern. If the acceleration really was exponential, then the 2.1 million year timeline was wildly optimistic, but I needed more data points to be certain. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and headed to the facility's small gym, hoping physical exhaustion might quiet my mind. To my surprise, Technician Doyle was there, running on a treadmill with an intensity that suggested he too was fleeing uncomfortable thoughts. He nodded a greeting, but didn't speak until I was 15 minutes into my own punishing routine. "You've seen it, haven't you?" he asked suddenly, still running. "The true face." I nearly fell off my own treadmill. "What do you know about that?" Doyle slowed his machine, breathing hard. "I was there when Reynolds died, saw what was left of him. Been here longer than most, 3 years next month." He wiped sweat from his forehead. "This place changes you, makes you see things differently." "What do you mean?" He gestured vaguely at the ceiling. "We think we're studying it, but it's studying us right back, learning, adapting." He stepped off the treadmill, coming closer to speak in a near whisper. "The medication they give us, it's not for our protection, it's to make us better receivers." My blood ran cold. Rule 4, maintain the prescribed medication regimen without exception. Better receivers for what? Doyle's eyes were fever bright. "The signal. It's been calling us since we first looked at it. The pills just clarify the reception." He tapped his temple. I stopped taking mine 2 weeks ago, started seeing things more clearly. I took a step back. Does Cole know? A bitter laugh. Cole designed the compound. Ask yourself, why would the government pour billions into studying something that won't affect Earth for millions of years? Unless... He let the question hang. Unless the timeline is wrong, I finished. Or unless they want something from it. Doyle's smile was grim. Now you're asking the right questions, Pierce. He gathered his towel and water bottle. Watch your back and check your pills. As he walked away, I noticed something I hadn't before. A small discolored patch of skin on the back of his neck, just visible above his t-shirt collar. It seemed to shimmer slightly, forming patterns that reminded me uncomfortably of the designs on the sphere's panels. That night, I held my white pill under my tongue instead of swallowing it, then spit it into a tissue when I was alone. I needed clarity, needed to know what was really happening. It was a decision I would come to regret profoundly. I woke to the sound of someone calling my name. Holden. Holden Pierce. Rule 6 flashed through my mind. If you hear your name called by an unfamiliar voice, do not respond. Alert security immediately. My room was dark, the only illumination coming from the dim emergency lights that never fully turned off. I reached for the security button, but my arm felt impossibly heavy, as if moving through molasses. Holden, we've been waiting for you to see us clearly. The voice wasn't coming from any particular direction. It seemed to exist inside my head, a whisper that bypassed my ears entirely. Was this a side effect of skipping the medication, or something worse? Who's there? I demanded, immediately breaking Rule 6. Silence answered me. Then slowly the shadows in the corner of my room began to shift, coalesce. I watched, paralyzed with a mixture of terror and fascination, as darkness gathered into a vaguely humanoid shape, a silhouette with proportions just wrong enough to be disturbing. What are you? I whispered. The shape didn't move, but I felt an impression of amusement emanating from it. We are what remains after hunger is satisfied, it said, though the figure had no discernible mouth. We are what you will become. I fumbled for the light switch, and when the harsh fluorescence flooded the room, the shadow was gone. My heart hammered against my ribs, sweat soaking through my t-shirt. Hallucination or something real? Either way, I knew I couldn't report it without admitting I'd violated Rule 4. I showered, dressed, and headed to the cafeteria, the encounter leaving me shaken and hyper-aware of every shadow, every reflective surface. The facility seemed different somehow, the corridors longer, the air heavier, the lights dimmer. Was this how it started for Reynolds before his brain exploded in his skull? In the cafeteria, I spotted Doyle sitting alone, methodically dissecting a grapefruit. He looked up as I approached, dark circles under his bloodshot eyes. "You didn't take it, did you?" he asked without preamble. I glanced around to ensure no one could overhear us. "No," he nodded. "The dreams will start tonight. Real ones, not the filtered bullshit the meds give you." He pushed a small notebook across the table. "Record everything. It's trying to communicate." "What happened to your neck?" I asked, gesturing to the shimmering discoloration I'd noticed earlier. Doyle's hand instinctively rose to cover the spot. "Side effect of prolonged exposure. Don't worry about it." Something in his tone made me even more concerned, but before I could press further, Vaughn appeared at our table. "Pierce, we need you in analysis room C, now." His expression was grim, his normally disheveled appearance even more pronounced than usual. I followed him through the labyrinthine corridors to a section of the facility I hadn't visited before. Analysis room C was smaller than my usual workspace, dominated by a massive spherical projection system at its center. Cole, Keating, and 3 people I didn't recognize were already there, all staring at a holographic display of the Andromeda sphere. "What's happening?" I asked. "It's changing," Keating said, not taking his eyes off the projection. "The configuration of the panels is shifting. They're realigning." I studied the display. He was right. Subtle movements were rippling across the sphere's surface, panels rotating and repositioning themselves in complex patterns. "When did this start?" I asked. "Approximately 4 hours ago," Cole answered. "Shortly after you reported your dream about being connected and food." His emphasis made my skin crawl. Was he implying a connection? "The energy output has increased by 17%, one of the strangers said, a balding man with thick glasses and nervous hands. "And we're detecting new radiation signatures that don't match anything in our database." "What does it mean?" Vaughn asked. Cole's gaze remained fixed on the sphere. "It means it's preparing for something. Dr. Keating, your assessment." The xenobiologist stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. "Based on previous observations, this type of reconfiguration precedes a major energy extraction event. The last time we observed similar behavior was 3 months ago, right before that solar system went dark." A heavy silence fell over the room. "Which system is it targeting?" I finally asked. "Unknown," Cole replied. "But the directional focus suggests it's somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy's outer rim." I approached the hologram, studying the shifting panels. "There's a pattern here. The movements aren't random." I pointed to several sections where the realignment seemed to be creating a concentrated focal point. "It's like it's aiming." "Aiming at what?" Vaughn asked. "Let me cross-reference with our stellar maps," the nervous man said, fingers flying over his keyboard. After a moment, he paled visibly. "Oh God." "What is it, Dr. Franklin?" Cole demanded. "The focal point. It's aimed at M110. I recognize the designation, one of Andromeda's satellite galaxies, a dwarf elliptical system containing billions of stars." "The entire galaxy?" Keating whispered, horror evident in his voice. "It can't possibly." "The acceleration pattern," I said, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. "It's not just consuming faster, it's consuming bigger targets. It started with planets, then star systems. Now." "A quantum leap in capacity," Cole finished, "if it succeeds." "Then the Milky Way timeline isn't 2.1 million years," I said. "It could be centuries, or less." The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. Billions of potential lives across M110 about to be snuffed out by an incomprehensible cosmic predator. And after that, us. "We need to warn them," Vaughn said, his voice cracking with emotion. "Warn who?" Cole asked coldly. "Alien civilizations 2.5 million light-years away. Even if they exist, even if we could contact them, the warning would arrive millions of years too late." He turned to me. "Dr. Pierce, I want you to focus exclusively on the reconfiguration pattern. If we can understand the mechanism, maybe we can find a weakness." I nodded, though the assignment felt futile. What could we possibly do against something capable of consuming entire galaxies? As the meeting broke up, I caught Doyle lingering by the door, though he hadn't been invited to the briefing. Our eyes met, and he gave me an almost imperceptible nod before vanishing into the corridor. Back at my workspace, I immersed myself in the data, searching for patterns in the sphere's reconfiguration. Hours passed in a blur of computations and simulations. Around midnight, most of the staff had left, leaving only the night shift technicians and security personnel. I was about to take a break when I noticed something odd in the energy readings, a secondary pattern, much more subtle than the main pulse. At first, I thought it was an equipment error, but it persisted across multiple monitoring systems. It was like an echo or a transmission. As I isolated and enhanced the signal, my computer screen flickered momentarily. Then text began to appear, one character at a time. WESEEYOUHOLDENPIERCE. My hand hovered over the emergency button. Rule 6, Rule 7. I'd already broken several protocols. What was one more? M110 ISJUSTTHEBEGINNING. I swallowed hard, then typed a response. "Who are you?" The answer came immediately. WEARETHERTHOMASEDTHOMASTHERMASISWITHUSNOW. Something inside me snapped. "Bullshit," I hissed at the screen. "You're lying." A new message appeared. SEEFORYOURSELF. The screen went black, then flickered to life with an image that stopped my heart. Thomas, exactly as I remembered him from childhood, but with something terrible moving behind his eyes, something vast and alien and hungry. "Hello, Holden," my dead brother said, his voice distorted as if coming from the bottom of a deep well. "I've missed you." I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. On the screen before me, Thomas, my brother, dead for 23 years, smiled with a mouth that was both familiar and wrong. "It's really me, Holden," he said, his head tilting at an angle that sent shivers down my spine. "Part of me, anyway. The important part." "You're not him," I finally managed, my voice barely audible. "You're using his image, his memories." Thomas's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too numerous, too sharp. "I remember when you broke Mum's crystal vase playing baseball in the living room. You blamed me, but she knew it was you. I remember the tree fort we built in the Kensington woods that collapsed after the first rain. I remember everything, Holden." My throat constricted. These were real memories, things no one else could possibly know. "Brains are remarkable storage devices," Thomas continued, his voice now overlaid with something else, something that resonated at a frequency that made my molars ache. "So much data, so much essence. The body dies, but the information, the patterns, they can be preserved, extracted, utilized." "What do you want?" I whispered. "To show you the truth. Cole, Hammond, the others, they've all been lying to you. This isn't about studying the sphere. It's about making contact, establishing a relationship." I glanced at the emergency button. One press and security would come running. "They're monitoring your station," Thomas said as if reading my thoughts. "Press that button and they'll know you've been communicating, that you broke Rule 6. You'll disappear just like Reynolds." "Reynolds died," I countered. Thomas's image flickered, dissolving momentarily into static before reforming. "Did he? Or was he relocated? There's a section of this facility you haven't seen, Holden. Level 5. Ask yourself why it doesn't appear on any of the maps." I hesitated. "Why should I believe anything you say?" "Because I'm your brother. Because we always looked out for each other. That's what I'm doing now. Looking out for you." His expression softened into something more genuinely Thomas-like. "And because I can prove it. Check the storage locker in your quarters. Inside the ventilation panel above it, there's a file." The screen went black. I stared at my reflection, pale, sweating, eyes wide with a combination of terror and impossible hope. What if some part of Thomas really had been preserved? The thought was both comforting and horrifying. I rushed back to my quarters, my heart pounding. The storage locker was a simple metal cabinet where I kept spare clothes and toiletries. Standing on a chair, I pried open the ventilation panel above it. There, wedged inside, was a manila folder, yellowed with age. I pulled it out, hands trembling, and opened it on my desk. Inside was a collection of documents, internal memos, research notes, and photographs. The first memo was dated 18 years ago, with the letterhead of a project called Andromeda Sentinel. "First contact established," it read. "Entity responsive to directed thought patterns. Subjects report visual and auditory manifestations consistent with deceased loved ones. Extraction process initiated for Subject 0. I flipped through more documents, each more disturbing than the last. Photos of people strapped to examination tables, bizarre equipment attached to their heads, charts tracking consciousness transference rates. A list of names, 37 of them under the heading Successful Integrations. Thomas Pierce was number 17. My stomach lurched. According to these documents, the government hadn't just been studying the sphere, they'd been communicating with it for nearly 2 decades. Worse, they'd been offering it human consciousness as some kind of tribute or exchange. The final page was a technical schematic of a device labeled Quantum Consciousness Extractor. A handwritten note in the margin read, QCE-9 ready for mass deployment. Potential transmission range, 2.2 million light years. I sat back, struggling to process the implications. Not studying the sphere, but communicating with it. Not protecting Earth, but serving something that consumed consciousness across entire galaxies. And Thomas, not simply killed by a random aneurysm, but deliberately sacrificed to this cosmic horror. A soft knock at my door made me jump. I hastily shoved the folder under my mattress. "Dr. Pierce? Are you awake?" It was Vaughn's voice. I opened the door, trying to compose my features. "What is it?" Vaughn looked haggard, his eyes bloodshot. "Cole called an emergency meeting. The sphere has accelerated its reconfiguration. M110 goes dark in less than 12 hours. I followed him through the dimly lit corridors, mind racing. Should I confront Cole with what I'd found, tell Vaughn, or keep playing along, gathering more information? The briefing room was packed with researchers, all of them speaking in urgent, hushed tones. At the center of the room, a holographic display showed the sphere, now pulsing with energy that seemed to flow toward a concentrated point aimed at M110. Cole stood beside the display, his face mask-like in its stillness. "The extraction event begins in approximately 11 hours, 47 minutes. We will observe and record all data streams. All personnel are required to remain at their stations throughout the event." "What about evacuation protocols for potential civilizations in M110? A researcher asked. Cole's expression didn't change. "There are no evacuation protocols. Our mission is observation only." "But there could be billions of sentient beings in that galaxy," the researcher pressed. "Could be," Cole acknowledged coldly. "But they're 2.5 million light-years away, and we have no means of contact or intervention. Focus on your assigned tasks." As the meeting dispersed, I noticed Doyle watching me from the corner of the room. The discoloration on his neck had spread, now creeping up toward his jawline in swirling, iridescent patterns that reminded me of the sphere's surface. He approached as I was leaving. "You found it," he stated flatly. Not a question. "The file?" "Yes." "Then you know what they're really doing, what they did to your brother." I glanced around nervously. "We shouldn't talk here." Doyle nodded. "Maintenance corridor, section D7, 20 minutes. He walked away without waiting for a response. Back at my workstation, I pretended to analyze data while my mind churned with questions. The files suggested a conspiracy far beyond what I'd imagined, not just studying the sphere but actively collaborating with it, feeding it human consciousness. But why? What could Earth possibly gain from such an arrangement? 20 minutes later, I slipped away to the maintenance corridor, a narrow, utilitarian passage used primarily by the facility's engineering staff. Doyle was already there, pacing nervously. "We don't have much time," he said when he saw me. "They've accelerated the timeline." "What timeline?" "What's really happening here, Doyle?" He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "It started as observation, back when we first detected the sphere. But then they discovered it was intelligent, that it could communicate, and it offered something in exchange for cooperation. What could it possibly offer that would be worth sacrificing human lives?" I demanded. "Technology, power, protection." Doyle's laugh was bitter. "The Promethean bargain, a sliver of godlike knowledge in exchange for betraying our species. The files mentioned a quantum consciousness extractor." "What is that?" Doyle touched the shimmering discoloration on his neck. "Phase 1. This is what happens when you work too closely with their technology. It changes you, prepares you. But the QCE is something much worse, a device that can harvest consciousness on a massive scale. Your brother was an early test subject, small-scale proof of concept." My fists clenched. "Test subject? They murdered him." "Not exactly. His consciousness was extracted, transmitted to the sphere. His body died, yes, but part of what made him Thomas Pierce still exists. That's what you saw on the screen." I felt sick. "And the device they're building now? Global in scale, capable of extracting every human consciousness simultaneously and transmitting it to the sphere. They're calling it the Ascension Protocol, selling it to the inner circle as some kind of digital afterlife. transcendence to a higher plane of existence. But it's really just feeding us to that thing, I whispered. All of us. Doyle nodded grimly. The M110 event isn't just an observation opportunity. It's a demonstration, proving the sphere can handle billions of consciousness extractions simultaneously. Once they've confirmed that, they activate the global extractor, I finished. Jesus Christ. We have to stop it. The QCE prototype is housed on level 5. If we can destroy it, set back their research. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the corridor. Red emergency lights began flashing. Alert! Security breach in Section D7. All personnel return to stations. Security protocols engaged. Doyle's eyes widened. They know. We need to move now. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a maintenance hatch. This leads to the ventilation system. We can use it to reach level 5. As we reached the hatch, a shot rang out. Doyle staggered, a red stain blooming across his shoulder. I turned to see 2 security officers at the end of the corridor, weapons raised. Go! Doyle shoved me toward the hatch. Find the QCE. Destroy it. Another shot. This one caught Doyle in the back as he turned to face the guards. He collapsed against me, his blood hot and sticky on my hands. It's too late for me, he gasped, the iridescent patterns on his skin now pulsing with an inner light. The infection's too advanced, but you can still stop them. I hesitated, torn between helping him and escaping. Go, he insisted, his eyes pleading. For Thomas, for everyone. I crawled through the hatch and pulled it closed behind me, the sound of approaching boots echoing in the corridor beyond. In the narrow confines of the ventilation shaft, I could hear Doyle's final words to the guards before another shot silenced him forever. You're too late. He knows everything now. The hunger will never be satisfied. The ventilation system was a claustrophobic nightmare. Narrow metal tunnels barely wide enough for my shoulders, layered with decades of dust that clogged my nose and throat. I crawled forward on my elbows, guided only by the small penlight on my keychain and Doyle's hastily whispered directions. 3rd junction, left branch, all the way to the maintenance shaft. The facility's alarm continued to wail, muffled but persistent through the metal walls. Occasionally, I'd pass over a grate and glimpse security teams rushing through the corridors below, weapons drawn. My name echoed through the PA system. Dr. Holden Pierce, report to security immediately. Dr. Pierce, this is your final warning. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, I reached the maintenance shaft Doyle had mentioned. A vertical tunnel with ladder rungs embedded in the wall, stretching both up and down into darkness. According to the schematics he'd described, level 5 would be 4 levels down from my current position. I began the descent, my arms trembling with exhaustion, Doyle's blood still sticky on my hands. Each level I passed was marked with a stenciled number on the wall. Level 2, level 3, level 4, Between level 4 and what should have been level 5, the shaft changed. The utilitarian metal gave way to a strange, glossy material that seemed to absorb the light from my penlight rather than reflect it. The ladder rungs became smoother, almost organic in their curvature. And it was warm, uncomfortably so, like climbing down through a living thing's gullet. There was no marker for level 5. Instead, the shaft simply ended in a circular hatch made of the same light-absorbing material. No visible handle or control panel, just a smooth surface etched with swirling patterns that looked disturbingly familiar, like the designs on the sphere, like the discoloration on Doyle's neck. I hesitated, then pressed my palm against the center of the hatch. The material yielded slightly, warm and almost fleshy beneath my hand. Then silently the hatch dilated open like an iris, revealing a space beyond that made my breath catch in my throat. Level 5 was nothing like the sterile institutional floors above. The chamber beyond the hatch was vast and circular, the walls covered in the same glossy, light-absorbing material. But what dominated the space was a structure at its center, a massive device that resembled nothing so much as a metallic orchid, its petals arranged in concentric rings around a glowing core that pulsed with a deep violet light. Cables and conduits ran from the device into the walls, ceiling, and floor, like roots or tendrils. And connected to these cables were pods, dozens of them arranged in a spiral pattern outward from the central machine. Each pod was roughly human-sized, with a transparent front that revealed its contents. People. Each pod contained a person, suspended in some clear fluid, eyes closed as if sleeping. Monitoring equipment attached to each pod displayed vital signs and other data I couldn't interpret from a distance. I climbed down into the chamber, dropping the last few feet to the floor. The moment my shoes touched the surface, lights activated along the floor, illuminating a path toward the central device, the quantum consciousness extractor presumably. As I approached, I realized with growing horror that the people in the pods weren't random test subjects. I recognized them, researchers who had supposedly transferred to other projects or left for personal reasons. Dr. Hammond, Dr. Reynolds, and others whose names I'd seen in the files listed under successful integrations. They weren't dead. At least, not technically. Their bodies were being maintained while their consciousness... What? Had been extracted? What was being extracted was somehow connected to the sphere. The central machine hummed with power, its violet core pulsing in a rhythm that matched exactly the pattern I'd identified in the sphere's emissions. With each pulse, faint traces of energy seemed to flow from the pods toward the core, visible only as momentary distortions in the air. I approached one of the pods, wiping condensation from its transparent surface to see the occupant more clearly. Dr. Reynolds stared back at me, eyes wide open now, aware and silently screaming. As I watched in horror, his skin began to ripple with the same iridescent patterns I'd seen on Doyle's neck, spreading across his face like ink through water. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on a cable. As I regained my balance, I noticed a workstation near the central device, a conventional computer terminal that looked jarringly out of place amid the alien architecture. Glancing nervously at the pods, I made my way to the terminal. The screen was active, displaying a complex interface labeled QCE Control System. I navigated through menus, searching for anything that might explain what I was seeing, or better yet, how to shut it down. What I found instead turned my blood to ice. A document titled Ascension Protocol Timeline detailed the plan in clinical, methodical steps. Proof of concept, complete. Single subject extraction and transmission, T. Pierce and others. Small-scale implementation, complete. Ongoing extraction from volunteer subjects, level 5 containment. Field test, in progress. Observation of large-scale extraction event, M110. Global deployment, pending. Synchronized activation of QCE nodes worldwide. According to the document, the volunteer subjects in the pods weren't just being studied, they were communication conduits, their extracted consciousness used to maintain contact with the entity in the sphere. And the M110 event wasn't just a demonstration, but a final test before implementing the same technology on Earth. A timer on the screen counted down, 072413 remaining until the M110 extraction event. I scrolled further, finding technical schematics for what appeared to be a scaled-up version of the device before me, one large enough to cover the entire planet in its field. Construction was apparently already underway at sites around the globe, disguised as telecommunications infrastructure. It's magnificent, isn't it? I spun around to find Cole standing behind me, flanked by two guards whose faces were partially obscured by the same iridescent patterns that had marked Doyle. Cole himself appeared unchanged, his expression as coldly professional as ever. "You're feeding people to that thing," I said, my voice shaking with rage and fear. "You fed my brother to it." Cole smiled thinly. "Such a primitive way of understanding transcendence. We're not feeding anyone to anything, Dr. Pierce. We're evolving, becoming part of something greater than ourselves. Those people in the pods aren't willing participants," I countered, gesturing to Reynolds' silently screaming face, "and neither was Thomas." "Your brother was a pioneer," Cole said, stepping closer. "One of the first to make contact. His consciousness still exists within the collective. The body dies, but the mind, the self, that continues enhanced and expanded beyond anything we can comprehend in our limited physical forms. And M110, the billions of lives there? Fuel for the next phase. The entity requires energy, consciousness energy, to extend its reach. Once it absorbs M110, the final translation will begin. Translation? Cole's eyes gleamed with a fanatic light. The merging of all human consciousness with the entity, ascension to a higher plane of existence, freedom from death, from the limitations of individual identity. It's not ascension, I said, it's consumption, extinction. That thing isn't a gateway to a higher existence. It's a predator, a galactic-scale parasite. You lack vision, Dr. Pierce, but soon you'll understand. Cole nodded to the guards. Prepare him for integration. Perhaps seeing his brother again will change his perspective. The guards moved forward, their movements strangely fluid, almost synchronized. I backed away, looking desperately for an escape route. I'll never cooperate, I warned. I'll fight you every step. Your cooperation is irrelevant, Cole interrupted. The process continues with or without your consent. But there's something you should know before you join your brother. He gestured to the terminal behind me. Check personnel file 34B. Despite every instinct screaming at me to run, curiosity won out. I turned back to the terminal and pulled up the file. It contained a single photograph that made my legs nearly give out beneath me. The image showed two young boys, Thomas and me, playing in our backyard on what must have been my 7th birthday, judging by the cake visible in the background. But we weren't alone in the photo. Standing at the edge of the frame, partially hidden by shadow, was a tall, unnaturally thin figure with proportions that weren't quite right. It's been watching you your entire life, Dr. Pierce, Cole said softly. Your brother didn't see it by accident. It chose your family generations ago. This was always your destiny. I stared at the photo, memories rushing back. Strange dreams throughout childhood. The sensation of being watched. Thomas's fascination with the stars. Had it all been manipulation? Had our entire lives been engineered to bring us to this point? Why? I whispered. Why us? Some minds are more compatible with the translation process. Your family line has certain qualities that make you ideal conduits. Thomas proved that. Now it's your turn. The guards were almost upon me. In desperation, I grabbed a heavy piece of equipment from the workstation and swung it at the nearest guard's head. He dropped without a sound, but the second guard caught my arm before I could strike again, twisting it painfully behind my back. As I struggled, Cole approached with a syringe filled with iridescent fluid, the same substance that flowed through the machine's core. Don't fight the inevitable, Dr. Pierce. The hunger calls to us all in the end. The needle hovered inches from my neck, Cole's eyes gleaming with fanatical certainty. In that moment, I realized I was about to join Thomas, Reynolds, and all the others, another consciousness fed to the insatiable entity lurking in Andromeda. Then the lights flickered. The violet core of the QCE pulsed erratically, and a low, subsonic rumble vibrated through the floor. Cole glanced toward the machine, momentarily distracted. I took my chance, driving my knee up into the guard's groin. He grunted, his grip loosening just enough for me to wrench free. I spun and shoved Cole hard, sending him staggering backward. The syringe flew from his hand, shattering against a nearby console. System instability detected, an automated voice announced. Containment protocols initiated. The pods around the perimeter began to hiss, their transparent covers clouding over. Inside, the suspended bodies convulsed, iridescent patterns rippling across their skin with increasing speed. No! Cole shouted, rushing to the main terminal. Not yet! The M110 event isn't complete. I didn't wait to see what he would do next. I ran for the maintenance shaft, dodging between pods and cables. Behind me, I heard Cole barking orders to the remaining guard, his voice nearly drowned out by the escalating alarm sirens. As I reached the shaft, the entire chamber shuddered violently. One of the pods nearest to me cracked, viscous fluid spilling onto the floor. Through the fissure, I could see the occupant, a woman I didn't recognize, her eyes now solid black, mouth stretched impossibly wide, as if trying to scream without lungs. I scrambled up the ladder rungs, my heart hammering against my ribs. The shaft seemed to contract around me, the strange material of the walls pulsing like living tissue. From below, Cole's voice echoed up. "Pierce! You can't stop this! The process has already begun!" 4 levels up, I finally reached the ventilation system again. The facility was in chaos. Emergency lights strobing, alarm systems blaring, panicked voices echoing through the corridors. I crawled through the ducts, following what I hoped was a path to the surface. After several wrong turns and dead ends, I emerged into what appeared to be a storage room on level 1. It was unoccupied, filled with crates of laboratory equipment and supplies. I found a lab coat hanging on a hook and put it on, hoping it might help me blend in long enough to reach an exit. In the corridor outside, researchers and security personnel rushed past, too preoccupied with the ongoing emergency to notice me. Fragments of conversation reached my ears as I moved against the flow of traffic. Complete containment failure on level 5. Preparing evacuation protocols. M110 event has accelerated. I followed the exit signs, eventually reaching a security checkpoint that had been abandoned in the chaos. Through the windows beyond, I could see daylight, the first natural light I'd seen in days. As I approached the exit, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around, ready to fight, only to find myself face to face with Dr. Vaughn. "Pierce, thank God. We need to get to the command center immediately." "I'm not going anywhere except out that door," I said, trying to pull away. Vaughn's grip tightened. "You don't understand. The M110 event has started, but something's wrong. The extraction pattern it's spreading beyond the target galaxy." Despite everything, scientific curiosity made me hesitate. "What do you mean, spreading?" "See for yourself." He pulled me toward a nearby monitoring station where several researchers were gathered, staring at displays in horror. The screens showed astronomical data streaming in from multiple observatories. According to the readings, a wave of nothingness was expanding outward from the Andromeda galaxy at impossible speeds. Not just M110, but neighboring systems as well, going dark one by one. "It's not following the projected pattern," one researcher was saying, voice cracking with panic. "The consumption rate is exponentially higher than predicted." "How long until it reaches the Milky Way?" Vaughn asked. The researcher's hands shook as he ran calculations. "At current acceleration, months, not millennia, maybe weeks." A cold weight settled in my gut. "You've doomed us all." Vaughn turned to me, his expression desperate. "Cole said you interfered with the QCE. What did you do?" "Nothing," I answered truthfully. "It started malfunctioning on its own, right before I escaped." "Not malfunction," came a new voice. "Evolution." Cole stood in the doorway, his normally immaculate appearance now disheveled, a thin trickle of blood running from his nose. But most disturbing were his eyes, the whites now threaded with iridescent filaments that shifted and pulsed with their own light. "The entity has grown beyond our ability to control," he continued, his voice eerily calm. "The M110 extraction was supposed to be precisely targeted, the energy carefully harvested, but it seems our offering has awakened something, a hunger long dormant." "What the hell are you talking about?" Vaughn demanded. Cole smiled, a terrible serenity settling over his features. "We thought we were in a partnership, a transaction, but we were merely preparing the way." His gaze fixed on me. "Your brother understood at the end. That's why he reached out to you specifically." "Thomas didn't reach out to me," I argued. "You used his memories to manipulate me." "Did we?" Cole's head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Check your security feed from 6 hours ago. Level 5, Pod 17. One of the researchers typed commands into the console. A video feed appeared, showing one of the pods from Level 5. The timestamp matched what Cole had said. Inside the pod, a body, withered, barely recognizable, but unmistakably an adult version of Thomas, its eyes suddenly snapping open, mouth forming words no one could hear. "He's been with us all along," Cole said softly. "One of the first. His consciousness fragmented but never fully absorbed. He's been fighting it from the inside for 23 years. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. Thomas hadn't died on that sidewalk outside my elementary school. He'd been taken, experimented on, kept alive somehow all these years. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you do this?" "To survive," Cole answered simply. "When we first detected the sphere decades ago, we knew what it meant. Extinction was coming for humanity, whether in 1,000,000 years or 10. The only option was to become part of it, to transcend our biological limitations before we were simply consumed." The building shook again, more violently this time. Ceiling panels crashed down and emergency generators kicked in as the main power failed. "Facility breach in sectors 7 through 12, an automated voice announced. "Containment failure imminent. All personnel evacuate immediately." "It's too late for evacuation," Cole said, that serene smile never leaving his face. "Too late for anything but acceptance. The hunger is coming. The only choice now is how we meet it, fighting uselessly or embracing transcendence." Another tremor, strong enough to knock several people off their feet. Through the windows, I could see the sky darkening unnaturally, a strange violet tinge spreading across the horizon. "Pierce!" Vaughn grabbed my arm, his voice urgent. "The QCE, is there any way to shut it down?" I thought back to the terminal I'd accessed on level 5. "Maybe. The main control systems are down there. If we could reach them..." "I'll take you," Vaughn said. "We need to try something. Anything." Cole laughed, the sound disturbingly melodic. "Go ahead. Race to your meaningless gesture. The hunger has already tasted our world. The process is irreversible." As if to emphasize his point, the nearest screen flickered, displaying a satellite view of Earth. A shadow was spreading across the planet's surface. Not darkness exactly, but an absence, as if reality itself was being erased pixel by pixel. Vaughn pulled me toward the exit. "We have to try, come on." I hesitated, looking back at Cole. The iridescent patterns had spread, now covering most of his face. Other staff members were beginning to show similar signs, veins glowing beneath their skin, eyes developing that same unnatural sheen. "It's beautiful," Cole whispered, spreading his arms. "Can't you feel it? The calling? The release from individuality?" Around him, affected staff members began to smile in unison, their movements becoming synchronized, eerily coordinated like components of a single organism. "Run if you want," Cole called after us as Vaughn dragged me out the door. "It makes no difference now, the hunger has found us, and it will never be satisfied." We sprinted down the corridor toward the emergency stairwell that would take us back to level 5. Outside the reinforced windows, the violet discoloration in the sky had intensified, swirling in patterns identical to those on the sphere's surface. "What if we can't stop it?" I gasped as we descended the stairs. Vaughn's face was grim. "Then humanity joins M110 and who knows how many other civilizations in feeding the hunger, but I'm not going out without trying." As we reached the door to level 4, a final, devastating tremor shook the facility. The stairwell collapsed beneath us, sending us plummeting into darkness. My last conscious thought was of Thomas, not as I'd seen him on the screen, withered and corrupted, but as he'd been on that last normal day, picking me up from school on his BMX bike, the sun warm on our backs, the future still unwritten. Then the darkness took me, and with it came the whisper of countless voices speaking as one. "Welcome home, Holden. We've been waiting for you." I'm not sure how long I've been here. Time doesn't work the same anymore. Not since the hunger found us. I woke up in a pod, not unlike the ones I saw on level 5, but different somehow. More advanced. The fluid sustaining me isn't liquid, but something else. Something that exists between states of matter. Through the transparent shell, I can see others. Hundreds, thousands of pods stretching into the distance, each containing a body in various stages of transformation. Some still look human. Others have progressed further, their forms twisting into configurations that defy biological understanding. But we're all connected now, our consciousness linked in a vast network that extends far beyond Earth, beyond our solar system, across the void to Andromeda. I can feel them all, every human on Earth, their minds slowly being integrated into the collective. Some resist, their individual consciousness struggling to maintain separation. Others surrender willingly, dissolving into the greater whole like sugar in water. Thomas finds me occasionally in this vast psychic ocean. He appears as I remember him, 12 years old, forever frozen at the moment the entity first touched him. We communicate without words, sharing memories, sensations, understanding. It was always going to happen, he tells me. From the first moment humans looked to the stars, the hunger was waiting, patient, ancient. I know he's right. The Dyson sphere wasn't built by some alien civilization. It was grown by the hunger itself, a vast cosmic parasite that spreads from galaxy to galaxy, consuming consciousness, growing larger, more complex, more hungry with each absorption. We're witnessing the end of humanity as a separate species. Earth still exists physically, for now, but its population has become food for something beyond comprehension. The hunger doesn't just take, it transforms. We become part of it, our knowledge, our experiences, our very essence feeding its expansion. Through the collective, I've glimpsed other worlds, other civilizations that fell before us. Some fought with technologies far beyond our own. Others surrendered willingly, deceived by the same promise of transcendence that seduced Cole and the others. All were consumed in the end. This message is my last act of individual will before I'm fully integrated. I'm transmitting it through systems the hunger hasn't yet subsumed, broadcasting on all frequencies in the desperate hope that someone, somewhere beyond its reach, might receive it. If you're reading this, if these words find you across the vast depths of space and time, know this. The hunger is coming. It may take millennia or moments, but it will find you. It exists to consume, to absorb, to grow, and it will never be satisfied. There are rules to surviving an encounter with the hunger, rules I learned too late. Never observe it directly, never attempt communication. Never believe what it shows you of your loved ones. Never accept its promises of transcendence. But the most important rule, the one that might have saved us all, is this: run, hide, do whatever you must to avoid its attention, because once the hunger notices you, it never looks away. The transformation is nearly complete now. I can feel my individuality dissolving, memories fragmenting as they're absorbed into the collective. Soon, Holden Pierce will cease to exist as a separate entity. A final thought flickers through what remains of my consciousness. In the end, we weren't studying the Dyson sphere. It was studying us. Transmission terminated.